Hi, welcome to the Dan Bradbury podcast, where turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. In this podcast, I'll bring you resources, tips, interviews, and lots more to help to grow your business and make it less dependent on you. Hi, I'm Dan Bradbury.
And I am Topher Morrison.
And welcome to the Dan Bradbury podcast.
How are you, my friend? It's been a couple. Let's see. Last week we were mid-hurricane season here in Tampa, and so we didn't know if I was going to be alive or not. So, spoiler alert: I didn't die.
Good job. You're winning.
Yeah. Didn't take a lot of skill on my part. Just basically avoiding the rain and the wind. So, anyway,
to be honest, there's business analogies there already, Topher. It's like it didn't take a lot of skill on your part, but some people didn't evacuate, and I'm willing to bet, and I don't mean to speak better than dead, but I'm willing to bet that more deaths occur in the areas where people don't evacuate when they're told to than in the.
Well, right? The unfortunate part about this storm was that it pivoted so quickly. Within first off, one of my favorite posts I saw online was that tracking a hurricane is like being stalked by a turtle, right? Because it just goes so slow. So yes, people did have the ability to get out within a certain range, though. It pivoted south, and so far the death toll is over 120. So it's unfortunate. And yes, those are people that did not evacuate and thought they could stick it out. The most interesting one who did survive, by the way, a guy survived on his boat. He had a houseboat, and he thought he would ride it out, and he was right in the eye. And he has two boats. Both of them, put this in perspective, 50 tons. That's how big his boats are. They're like almost floating hotels, right? So one was a houseboat, one was a yacht. He put both of them together. Both of these yachts, a total of 100 tons, they are now on land.
Oh, wow.
They are now inland. Yeah, the whole thing's got lifted up and brought in, but the guy survived riding out.
The guy's okay, but the boat's not so much.
They're done. Yeah, they're completely done. They're an insurance claim at this point in time for sure. Anyway, let's move on. Oh, there's so much to talk about in the world right now beyond hurricanes. Let's get into the news of the week, my friend.
All right, the news of the week this week is related to cost of living crisis, specifically OPEC reducing supply to increase prices. So, as much as I'm sick to death of this crap right now, and I'm sure it's as busy in the US as it is in the UK, Topher, but I think there are a very important lesson for all small business owners from this. So,
absolutely right, because these guys, first off, they can determine the price just simply by reducing the supply, right? So since they can't really control the demand because the demand's maxed out anyway, they go, it's the De Beers diamond business model as well.
I was about to say exactly the same thing. Same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just reduce the supply.
Diamonds aren't rare. Yeah.
No. Yeah. By the way, fun fact: did you know that there is a planet made entirely out of diamonds?
I did not know this.
There is. Yes, they have located a planet that is all diamond.
And Elon Musk is planning a rocket to travel there as we speak.
Yes, he's already probably found out. He's like, God, if we could just blast it with the rocket, the tail end of the shrapnel would be great diamonds, and we could just mine them with some big net. I'm sure he's already thinking of a way to do that for sure.
But actually, there's another analogy in that, and we're jumping all over the place. But what the hell? The right resource in the wrong place has a radically different value, right? So some business owners go, oh, we got this and it's not worth anything, but the same resource, the same data, the same whatever in a different environment, it has a completely different price. So that analogy talked to me by my friend from Leamington Spa, Peter Thompson. You remember Peter, Topher?
I do.
He
Brilliant.
used the analogy of the UK's most prolific product creator, information product creator, said if you found a silver tray, and you found that, if you found that at Harrods in London, a silver tray that you serve drinks on, this big by this big. Got to see the video to know the size.
I'm familiar with the size of silver trays.
Right? He's like, how much would that cost if we're in Harrods and he gets the audience to get out? And they'd say £100, £200, that kind of thing. And it's like, okay, great. How much would it be if it was just at a regular department store? People go, £50, right? And then he goes, how much is that worth if it was at a car boot sale? And immediately people are like, £10, £5. And he goes, yep, same silver tray. And then the punchline is, where are you selling your product or service? Are you positioning it at Harrods, or are you putting it in the car boot sale, right? So, because it's like a planet of diamonds is tremendously valuable if you can access it.
Yep.
Anyway, I digress.
Brilliant. Well done. Look at you making those connections to my bizarre associations. Well done. It's good at least one of us is keeping us on track. So anyway,
yes.
Going back to OPEC, the most evil organization around, in my opinion. Yes, they are reducing their supply so they can essentially increase their prices. And their excuse, of course, is the war in Ukraine and Russia, which is not going to impact us as much. It'll impact us in the States from a fuel perspective per gallon for petrol.
Don't even get me started on American. Yeah, don't even get me started on American petrol prices or gas prices, you call it. I mean, they were a third of what ours always was anyway. But anyway,
all the time, yeah.
But try this on, right? Look, we're not making light of people that have got a genuine cost of living crisis where it's really negatively impacting them. But just imagine you're in the oil business. That is your business. I mean, think about this, right? So oil prices were $120 a barrel in June. We're recording this in October, right? So we're 4 months later, and it's fallen to $80 a barrel. So it's fallen by a third, right? A third in that period of time. I mean, that takes out a lot of small businesses. That takes out all of your profit. But if you think back just a little bit further, these evil oil companies, and I can't believe I'm arguing against you just because I like arguing against you, Topher. Yeah, but people are like, oh yeah, the evil oil companies. I'm like, yeah, do you remember during the pandemic when literally it fell to below $0 a barrel?
Yes, there was negative value on oil. Yeah.
And it's like, holy crap, how is that true? And it's like, well, because they had to pay to store it in tankers and because there was too much. Yes. And so on the one hand, I mean, I don't know what this means in absolute terms. And I believe that individual families need to be supported. It's like, oh, tax the evil oil companies. And I'm like, yeah, what, the ones that lost all the money when it was negative value. And and the price has still dropped by 50%. And you kind of go, market economics. They're trying to adjust their price. Wouldn't you do the same?
Yeah, now I'm going to push back on you on that one because they've also reported record-breaking profits over the past couple of years, which is a great story. And how we tie this back to small business owners is focusing on your quarterly profits is important. Even focusing on your weekly profits is important. But you also have to compare that to how it is in the overall span of your yearly comparables from the years prior to that, because they still, yes, they did have during the pandemic a quarter or two where it was at negative. By the way, it wasn't even a quarter or two. I think it was a couple of weeks where it was at negative value. Yeah. And they have record-breaking profits. So I still stand by my evil empire statement. And also I can because I don't have a car, so I don't care about the price.
And for the record, you're right. I just so I don't get... I think I'm pretty immune to hate mail, but and thank you, by the way. I did note over in the last week the hate mail we got was actually specifically aimed at you, not at me. Good. So, but just to maintain that streak, I do want to say that was just for entertainment purposes. I'm with you on the evil oil empire giant, but for small business owners, well, the lesson is about supply and demand dictate price, right? Yeah. It's like how are you controlling the supply of your product or service, which we're going to get to an epic story later on in this podcast, just to tease it ahead of a business owner who is just absolutely crushing it by taking advantage of that exact principle.
Yes, and interestingly enough, by the way, I think another cool thing that we could tie this OPEC lesson into small business owners is that if you reduce your supply, you can raise your rates. What's the purpose of raising rates? The purpose of raising rates for small business owners, especially in service-driven companies, is to lose customers, right? Which is kind of a bizarre concept, right? But it's even better if you can lose customer base and then maintain the ones left at a higher level of profit than you had for that, because then that frees up your time. to either make strategic decisions, take a vacation, or what have you. So anyway,
or serve the customer more deeply.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Now okay, so we're talking about OPEC, evil empire. Let's move to another evil empire and let's talk about the business fail of the week. Boy, we're picking on the big guys today.
Right. So the business fail of the week is a US bank that has been fined because it was pressuring its employees to open fake accounts in customers' names in order to meet the sales goals.
Yes.
Right.
Now, by the way, people listening to this might be thinking you're talking about Wells Fargo, the company that did this 6 years ago. Sadly, it's happening again with US Bank, but that's the name of the bank for those of you who are not in the US, by the way. US Bank is the name of the bank, and they've just been busted for opening up fake bank accounts. It's just ridiculous.
And it makes me, by the way, so where's the lesson here? And one lesson that immediately comes up for me, because again, it's not about banks. Do you know what I think the lesson is, Topher? It's about incentives.
Well, I think there's two. It's about incentives, and it's also about not focusing on the right elements of business as well, right? Because so many small business owners, they're always focusing on sales, i.e. revenue or turnover, as you might say. And just like you say in your book, right? Turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, but cash flow is king. You could create all the bank accounts that you want, but if they're fake bank accounts, they're still not adding to the profit line.
Right. 100%. And so I think actually your headline is better than mine. It's about, because incentives is about aligning the employees with the company's goals, right? But the company's goals can sometimes be funky if they've got shareholders and they're doing stuff to jack the share price. Whereas as I understood this story, it was actually about employees meeting bonuses, right? So, and it's like, oh yeah, how do we measure it? Oh, we're opening more accounts. Yeah, great. As in, it's a kind of a sense check for more revenue streams, more customers. It's kind of like, yeah, I get that incentive. But the problem is, unless there's the appropriate checks and balances put into place, people cheat the system, right? Rather than doing stuff that's long term. So get ready for it, Topher. We're only a few minutes in. So to quote my good friend,
Warren Buffett.
Yeah, it's actually Charlie Munger, I think, who attributes where the quote comes from, which is, I would rather throw a viper down my shirt front than hire a compensation consultant. And he speaks to like the compensation culture being funky. And Warren says a lot of times that all their CEO compensation schemes are all a paragraph or two. It's very simplistic, because ultimately it's aligned to, I'm going to say profit, but that's not actually it. It's actually aligned to return on assets, return on equity. So he's saying if the person running that business, and they try and stem that down through the business, but that's the job of the CEO, ultimately saying, look, you've got equity, you've got shareholder funds. Your job is to get the highest possible return on those assets. The end. And if they do well, they get rewarded. And by the way, if they do badly, effectively they are punished. They are hindered. So so Warren's all about aligning shareholder incentives, either return for shareholders, with the employee incentives, so people don't play weird and wonderful games to kind of cheat the system. Which is make this about banks, but you could also make this about any sales team, salesperson.
Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like there's probably not anybody with a large sales team that's never found salespeople finding weird and wonderful ways to cheat the system, either very blatantly wrongly or in much more subtle, insidious ways, where getting that alignment is key. It's key.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting you talked about that. I think it's a brilliant connection, because how many small business owners suffer with this notion about how do we compensate our salespeople in a way which encourages maximum number of sales, and yet does so in a holistic way, to where they're not either artificially gearing it up to hit bonuses and holding back sales for the next month, because people will try to do that all the time. What kind of strategies do you have, or do you have any, with regard to how do you make sure that you've not created an incentive which actually produces a great deal for the salesperson, but a bad deal for the business owner?
Yeah, great question. So I've got some very strong opinions on this. So I'm going to plug a book, even though I've not read it for a long time. So I can't remember the author, but it's called The Balanced Scorecard. And to save you reading the book, because I don't think it was actually especially brilliantly written, but the gist of it is this. You've got opposing metrics that balance each other out. Let me give you an example. So this isn't from the book. This is from how I operate in my business system. You've got to think about any metric in isolation that can be a good thing, but if it's not counterbalanced, it gets funky. So take a marketing position. So let's say you've got a marketing director. What's their job for most small business? Ultimately, it's to generate leads for the sales team. So you go, oh, what's their metric? What's their KPI? And the obvious metric is
number of leads.
And then you go, okay, so then the question is, how is it possible for that number to go up and be great, but it still be bad for business or be detrimental?
Yes. By the way, this is what a lot of marketing companies do. They focus on number of leads. They get compensated based on that, but the leads are crap. And then eventually, the business owner is penalized because they had to pay for all these leads that are crap.
So let's play this game. And just so everybody knows, Topher doesn't know what this is going. So no pressure, Topher, but if you look stupid, you're getting fired from the show. So
that would cut my pay to nothing.
Yeah. Cut my pay by 0%. Wow. It's fame and adulation. That's what you live for. Let's be honest. Yes. So
praise, love from you. The fact that you just said 5 minutes ago your idea was better than mine. Don't think I haven't locked that into my heart. And I'm going to record that snippet and just play it as my ringtone for you.
All right, I suspect that the audience aren't finding this as funny as we are. So let's move on. So Topher, what's the opposing metric? So one thing that you need, so the check and balance on volume of leads is, you've already said it. What's a metric that you could measure to make sure that one stays in line? It's not just volume in leads. It's also
the quality or the caliber, does it match your ideal customer? Yeah.
Right. So how might you measure that? Well, for speed, one way is conversion rate. Like if you're selling just one thing at the same price, you could say, okay, it's the conversion rate. I.e., you might say if you're selling widgets, the leads get generated by the marketing person, passed to the sales team. The sales team work all the leads the same way. If the conversion rate on average goes down, it's because the quality of the lead has gone down, right? Mm-hmm. So you're going to say, okay, the marketing person is measured on volume of leads, number one, but number two, but the quality of the leads has to be X, right? But I'm going to ask you a third question, because typically I find it's a trifecta, Topher. So there's volume of leads, quality of leads. How is it possible that a marketing person could generate a great volume of leads, a great quality of lead, but it still be harmful, bad for business, i.e. hurt the P&L?
I don't know. You've got me stumped on this one.
All right. So I've given you the clue with hurt the P&L. Because someone will say, oh, we got too much and we haven't got the capacity to fulfill. That's fair. That could be true. But that's not the marketing person's problem, right? The business owner needs to stay aware of it. But how could the marketing person hurt the P&L? And it's how much they're paying for the leads. You go, right, we've got volume of leads.
Yeah.
You've got quality of leads. But actually, the volume and quality are in line and are good, are on target for the company's goal. But the cost per lead goes up tenfold. Yeah. You could have eroded all your profit margin. Yeah. So, and by the way, for me, and we've got this at an upcoming skills day we're doing about recruitment. The key for good recruitment, so there are multiple parts, but one key and the starting point is not the job description, what the person does. It's the scorecard. How do you know if they're winning? And for me, Topher, it's not more than 3 metrics, and neither is it less than 3 metrics. 3 is the sweet spot, and they kind of oppose each other. As I said, a trifecta of I want volume of leads, I want quality of leads, and I want an appropriate cost per lead. And there's targets or parameters set for each. What does good, better, and best look like for each of those roles? And by the way, Topher, that perfectly sets up your one-to-one. So if you're my marketing person, Topher, which would be crazy. But anyway, side note, let's live in this crazy parallel universe. So I go, hey, Topher, in my widget business, generating more than like 50 leads is good, 75 leads a month is great, and 100 leads a month or more is the best ever. having a conversion rate of 10% is good, 15% is great, and 20% is epic, right? So you now got a score like a traffic light, red, amber, green, and then going a cost of $5 a lead is good, $10 is great, $15 is epic, right? Like, so you'll end up with something like that, and you go, okay. And then what you want is, when you're looking at this traffic light, it's like, if you're spending more than $15 a lead, so let's say the conversion rate's good, I can't remember the numbers, but let's say you're great on the volume, you're great or good on the conversion rate, but the cost is more than, whatever number I said that was like the minimum number. Yeah. Like, it's too high. You're like, hey, when we have our one-to-one, immediately it's like, Topher, you're doing great here, pat on the back. You're doing great here, pat on the back, but this is out of whack. Or the same, the cost is good, the conversion is good, but the volume is bad. It immediately gives them insight in how to manage the employees. So,
interesting. You could literally market your way into bankruptcy too.
And how many businesses have done exactly that so far?
Yeah.
And it's, by the way, we got off track because this is about sales, but the point that what we just talked about is about metrics, which could be applied to any position, right?
Yeah. And here's, I think, by the way, there's maybe even another lesson there as well, which is how many business owners actually know those three metrics as well. They might know how many leads they're getting a month. My guess would be this. Most business owners probably know how many leads they get a month. The average ones might know their conversion rate, and so few business owners actually know what their cost per leads actually are. They just don't track those numbers of
and it's not cost per lead, because actually, Topher, it's not cost per lead, it's cost per sale, right?
Customer acquisition cost. Per lead your CAC.
Correct. Because if the cost per lead goes up, but the conversion rate goes up much higher, actually your net, the money you pay to acquire a new customer, somebody who gives you money for the first time, could go down. And you're like, oh my God, the lead cost has gone up by 12%. Yep. The cost per sale has gone down by 50% because the quality's better.
That's literally one of the things that I admire the most about you, and also hate, is that you are like Rain Man when it comes to looking at Excel spreadsheets and being able to see, how those leads and those numbers and those conversions track and trace down to their ultimate profitability, which leads into their cash flow. It boggles my brain how you do that. So much so that I want to punch you in the face when I see you do it, because it's freaking brilliant. It really is.
That's why there is a remote podcast, Topher. The threat of physical violence, it keeps it remote. Yeah. So look, it is a skill. It's a skill that can be trained, and also that's what we do train, like with our mastermind members. Because if you're driving volume of leads, or you're even happy because you're getting a higher volume of leads, or even the conversion rates, if you're not dialed in on the financials, it's number one. Like the 6 areas of business, we were talking about this earlier offline.
Yep.
The 6 areas of business. But if you only did focus on one area, or the first area that's going to make the biggest impact, is getting dialed in with the metrics, getting dialed in the numbers. And most business owners don't, so you can work harder and make less damn money.
Oh, by the way, it's interesting. Do you know who Mr. Beast is? I know you watch a lot of YouTube. Are you familiar with him?
Yes, but I'm not a follower. But I know who it is. He is, yeah.
So I've been watching a lot, mainly because I think the algorithm decided that I was interested in him. So they've been feeding me a lot of his videos, and they are wildly entertaining. But interestingly enough, I saw an interview. And just for those
people that don't know, it's not porn.
No. First off, there's so many cool lessons, but I was watching an interview with him. There was another podcaster who got on his show and interviewed him, and he was going behind the scenes and talking about like how many hours they spend editing just one video. It's like 2,000 to 5,000 hours of editing, and they'll run multiple videos and then test them to see which one gets the bigger response rate before they even air it to the public, blah, blah, blah. But what was really interesting, and here's this brilliant kid who started when YouTube first opened, and he was like 12 years old, and he's building these videos and just got bigger and bigger, bigger, bigger. And I literally was just shaking my head when the guy interviewing was saying how much he was asking them some kind of a metric or number in terms of what they make per month or how much their payroll is per month or something. And I was really disheartening because he goes, yeah, I'm not really sure. He goes, I have an office full of people that know the numbers, and as long as they know it, and the interview goes, yeah, as long as they know their numbers, you don't really need to know them. I was like, no. And I was just like, you know what? If anything is going to be this guy's downfall, it's going to be that. He probably right now doesn't even realize how much money is being siphoned out of the back door because he's not looking. And we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars a month, by the way. This guy is making mad cash. And I promise you, he's got people siphoning money from him. He's not paying attention. I was like, always such a heartbreaker. Yeah. We have clearly gotten way off track here, but I think these are great conversations for business owners.
It's a good tee up for the next section. So an example that I heard this week is, he's not that well known in the UK, but Steve Harvey, the television host, obviously American television host, was talking about how he was defrauded out of $22 million by his accountant. And again, how many stories do we hear of celebrities being defrauded, right?
Yeah.
And it was quite a clever fraud, but the short version was, whether it be, a Mike Tyson, whether it be a Steve Harvey, whether it be 1,001 examples, people that make big money, a lot of celebrity athletes, but they don't delegate, they abdicate. I want to be clear to everyone. I'm not saying that you should do your own tax returns. I've never done a tax return in my life.
God, no. Right. Yeah.
Right. But nobody knows, nobody cares about your money as much as you do. And there's some people that will take advantage of you. And there's some people that mean well, but are incompetent. And that can be true. Like if you know the accountant, but actually it's delegated down the firm because it's scaled, people just make mistakes. And if nobody's checking it, we spoke about check and balance, the trifecta. It's kind of like at the end of the day, you sign the tax return. If HMRC come looking, I assure you, your accountant is going to say, well, I did it based upon the data that you told me. So if it's wrong, you're wrong, not them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. All right. Let's push on. Let's get to the hero of the week, because this is so directly related to all of these little threads that we've created here in this podcast already. Let's talk about the hero of the week.
So the hero of the week this week is Ian and Sam Morgan, actually. So Ian and Sam Morgan of MBS Accountants. So they have absolutely, because this week we're about sales. And so even though they're accountants, to tie back to the previous point and do an epic job for their clients, of which many are mastermind members, they've actually knocked it out of the park from a sales perspective, Topher.
Crushed it this past month. In fact, I've actually got some stats here that we could go through. Their sales are up 647% from last year.
Unbelievable.
That's insane. And by the way,
for clarity, I was going to say that it's not like they're a startup. Like this isn't a husband and wife team. They are husband and wife, but this is a proper company, right? With multiple, like a big staff, and so this isn't just two people that have gone from 10 grand to 60 grand. No, this is an established firm. Yep.
Yes, and by the way, the thing that I thought was really cool about that was that a whopping 40+% of that increase in sales is coming from, are you ready for this? Their current clients.
Yeah, good.
Not from new business, right? Yeah, absolutely. Which is just showing you that there's so much money to be made in your current database, in your current customer base, if you just give them the right service and high quality. And by the way, now this ties all the way back to OPEC. Right? Because it's not like they just reduced their supply so they could increase their prices. They also said, how do we also increase our service? And I think there's the difference between evil empires and great small businesses, that if you focus on how do you increase your services to give them the full rounded package, you can actually absolutely make more money, increase your profits. Their profits are up between 60 to 70%. I didn't get the exact number, but their profits are also up between 60 to 70% as well. Absolutely outstanding.
Right.
And by the way, and one of the things that's unique about them is that their whole thing isn't about accounting, you know this, Dan, is mainly talking about or telling the story of your business as it has laid out, right? You're basically telling them an account of what has happened. That's where the term accountancy comes from. So most accountants tell you a story of what has happened. And what was really unique about Ian and Sam is that, yes, they understand the importance of telling you the story about your business, but where they produce the value is they say, now, here's what we've taken from the story or the past, and how do you make better decisions for the future? And I think that's where they're really stepping it up in terms of what they offer. They're not just saying, here's what happened. They're saying, here's what happened, and here's where we can take this in the future. And I think that's probably
right. Well, I mean, that's it, right? I mean, that's why I'm obsessive. I'm not an accountant, but I can read numbers and use it to make. Ultimately, that's what you need. You need the data in order to make better business decisions. Yeah. Most accountants give you a tax return, but actually, that's not where you're going to make the money. Don't get me wrong. I'm not being disrespectful for accountants that just focus on taxes. Taxes for most business owners are the single biggest category of expense. I'm in favor of legally, to be clear, legally minimizing your taxes and the analysis of making better strategic business decisions. That's why we start with our mastermind members by getting financial clarity, so you know where to invest, where to scale, where to cut back, etc. from the get-go.
And here's a great gem, by the way, for those listening or watching to this podcast, is a great question for you to ask your accountant to know if you've got a great accountant. A great question is to ask your accountant after they've reported the accountancy or the numbers, say, what does that mean? And if you ask your accountant, what does that mean? And their answer is all about what it means in the past, that might be a good indicator that you want to look for another accountant, because what you want is you want to be able to have an accountant who has the ability to say, what does it mean in the future? Not what does it mean in the past?
Right. And that's rare. That's rare. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention, and I should have, Ian and Sam actually have launched fairly recently, it's only been out a few months, a podcast called The Leaky Bucket. And I am
great name for an accountancy podcast, by the way.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of where are the leaks in your business, and that's why I'm very happy that I'm going to be interviewed on the Leaky Bucket podcast in upcoming next week or the week after, I think. So we'll have to we'll put a link in the show notes.
Yes, and full transparency, by the way, when we were going through the outline of today's show, I was not aware that you were a guest of his podcast when I threw forth his information to become the hero of the week. So it's not like we're making them the hero of the week because you're on the podcast. That came out just through our pre-show download and discovering things. So that's kind of cool. I can't wait to hear the episode. Have you recorded? You haven't recorded it yet, have you?
No, it's been recorded in the next week or two, and I don't know how long that cycle is. It might be a few months before it hears the air, but who knows? But we'll regardless. Yeah, I was going to say, we'll link to the podcast regardless of whether my episode has been published or not. It's not. We're going to recommend a podcast, which is another recording of me.
No, had nothing to do with that. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, congrats to Ian and Sam, by the way. They're just such a genuinely awesome group of people. They're very, like when you meet them, they don't come across as accountants as either. I think that's also probably why I really enjoy them. They just don't have
they
that.
Seem human.
Yeah. They've got personality and vibe and stuff. And I really like that about them. All right. Let's see here. We've talked about news, fail, hero. Let's talk about book of the week.
Yeah, book of the week this week. So fun book, bit of a controversial character. Never Split the Difference.
Yes.
By is it Chris Voss? Is Chris his first
Voss.
name?
Yeah. Chris Voss. Brilliant book.
So I was going to say the thing that I like, and see if I'm remembering this quote exactly. It's kind of like it was really talking about what is negotiation for me, and a lot of people have got this thing like negotiation is about being really controversial and kind of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna barter you down, and they shy away from it. But I think the quote from the book was effectively somebody made a derogatory comment of like, oh yeah, he could like get the gold from your back teeth. To which the response was, no, that's not good negotiation. Good negotiation is getting you to give me the gold from your teeth and be happy to do so, right? It's like, how do you set it up so it actually feels like a win for both sides?
Yeah.
So,
background, by the way, for those who have not read his book, Chris Voss is a former FBI hostage negotiator. And that's why this book is so gripping, because every chapter is a story about a negotiation that was literally life or death. And then after he tells the story, he goes, and here's how it applies in business. And it's just one of those books where, like, I think the mark of a great instructor is when you listen to it, you go, well, if he could do it, I could do it. And, or, well, if it could apply to that, it could apply to me. And I think it's one of those where you go, yeah, if this works on a life or death negotiation, it would certainly work in a price negotiation. And I love it. In fact, I'll tell you this. Here's one of the gems that I got out of the book, Dan, which I absolutely loved. I think every sales training talks about the power of test closing and getting your customers to get into a yes set where they're saying yes, yes, yes. Yeah. And he was the first person who said, the best thing is to get your person to say no. Yeah. Because when they say yes, they might feel manipulated. And like I used to always, when I would call people on the phone, I'd say, is now a good time to talk? And getting them to go yes. And his thinking is, no. You say, is now a bad time to talk? Or did I catch you at a bad time? And then when they go, no, you didn't, now they feel more in control. They don't feel like they're being manipulated or pinched down into a yes set. And I just thought, that is brilliant. And I have forever since shifted that. When I get people on the phone, I go, did I catch you at a bad time? And they're like, no. What can I do for you? And I'm like, oh, it makes such a difference.
Yeah, it's so elegant. And the thing that I love, and this is going to be taken, not with a pinch of salt, but people have to be aware, because sometimes people use this to just try and stand out online or whatever from a marketing perspective. But sometimes it's like, no, the best people in an arena are the outliers, so they don't do what everybody else does. So that's a great example of so far is contrarian. Like the mainstream thinking is yes, say yes. And then you've got somebody contrarian thinking. And that's why some people I think don't like him. Some of his examples, they're gripping with something like, oh, I'm not sure. But the very best people nearly always by nature, to be an outlier, you have to be contrarian to what other people do, but just with a caveat of course, don't just believe everything somebody says just to the contrarian. That doesn't make it true either.
Which, by the way, reminds me of another great book, even though we're talking about his book, but Blue Ocean Strategy really encapsulates exactly what you're talking about there, where with the metaphor of that book is that the red ocean is where the blood's at because there's so many sharks eating and it's hard to compete in an area where the blood's already in the water. Go to the blue ocean where there's not competition. And I think
I'm going to quote another book. It's the consolidated letters of Berkshire Hathaway, letters to shareholders.
Oh, really? And who's doing that, by the way? Was that is there a person behind that?
I'm not sure. William Buffett? No, William what? Yes. So effectively, Warren Buffett, a classic. You want to be greedy when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy. And he gives an example of that, of saying contrarian thinking is where it's at. Like, you're not going to beat the market if you're just doing what the market does, but you can't beat the market unless you are educated, right? It's not like, so his point specifically as it relates to contrarian thinking is, if you go with the market, at best, you're going to get the market average results. At best. Yeah. If you just go contrarian thinking, that does not guarantee success. Contrarian thinking, he goes, actually, and I wish I could remember the exact quotes because I just read it recently. He said, actually, it requires you to do something truly controversial. And that is think for yourself. Right? He's saying, so actually, you've got to have the confidence to be willing to bet against the market when you know, or when you feel confident, or when you've got conviction. And he says, so like, I'm never looking at predictions from anybody else ever in any business decisions because it's irrelevant. It's entirely irrelevant. It's kind of going, I've really thought about the problem. Okay. And it's mispriced because he's looking for opportunities where shares are undervalued, etc. And he goes, it's mispriced and I'm convinced it's worth more. Right. And then obviously it's mispriced in his opinion, i.e. it's not what the market thinks, it's contrarian. But that doesn't mean, this share price is falling, so buy it. That could be just a fast-track route to bankruptcy.
Right, yeah.
Anyway, that was because I didn't remember the actual quote. I just went ad-lib on Warren Buffett. But
it's good. It's brilliant. That, so I'm almost...
I hear he watches the podcast, but...
Yes. I'm cautious of this because we've already talked about Warren twice now. But let me just tee it up so we can have a record. Do you have, by chance, a quote of the week that might be, I don't know, related to some guy named Warren Buffett?
It's a trifecta. It's a trifecta. So when we said you can't have one, you would have three things. So it's a great quote on a different topic. It's not financial in nature. It says, honesty is a very expensive gift So don't expect it from cheap people. Honesty is a very expensive gift, so don't expect it from cheap people. Right.
Well,
so
I think that ties all the way back to OPEC, right? I don't inherently think that they're a very honest group. Yeah.
Right. You're right. And I'm going to go into Warren Buffett quote number 4. So I'm not going to do it. I'm just the number of it is like deal with high integrity people. Right.
Yes.
Deal with high integrity people. Right, damn it! I'm going to give the quote. What the hell? It's when you're hiring, it's like you look for. Let me remember it. Intelligence, energy. Somebody's going to correct me on this, and it's going to annoy me that I've not got it right. You look for intelligence.
And you call yourself a
energy,
fan of Warren Buffett.
Damn it, it's not energy. It's another word that begins with I. And integrity. And he's like, and if you don't have the last one, forget the first two.
Right? I remember that quote too. Yes. You know what we'll do? We'll throw it up in the show notes.
Yeah, very good. I get to go and look it up.
Awesome. All right. Listen, it's been a great podcast, my friend. We've covered everything from Warren Buffett to Warren Buffett to Warren Buffett. So take us out of here.
What can be better? So as always, if you want a better business, you need to be a better business owner. See you next time. I hope you enjoyed that episode. 3 things you need to do now. Number 1, make sure you subscribe to this podcast so you do not miss an episode. Also, get on over to Amazon to get a copy of my latest book, Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity, 9.5 steps to improving your profits and cash flow. Also, join our Facebook group, the Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity community, to connect with other business owners.